All right, can I have your attention, please? On behalf of the Dailey family, Joni has asked me to say a few words about Eddie. Close to 50 years ago, I was sitting on the front stoop with my girlfriend Carol, and up pulls a beautiful red Z28 Chevy Camaro. Immediately, a tall, handsome guy jumps out of the car, asking, "Is this where Joni lives?" Carol, Joni's sister, looks at him and says, "Who the hell are you?" It was Ed Dailey, fresh out of the Navy, driving a smoking car, ready for a hot date with Joni. Jump to the summer of 2021. Eddie and his brother-in-law Tony are out on Eastern Long Island, looking at classic cars, and they find a 57 Chevy that Eddie is ecstatic about. Tony says, sorry, I lost my place here. Eddie tells Tony, "I'm buying that car." Tony says, "Ed, the guy wants 30 grand for the car." Eddie says, "I don't give a shit, I'm buying the car." The whole way home, Eddie is carrying on about how he's getting that car and how Tony has to come into the house to convince Joni to get in the car. Tony said when they got to the house and Ed got out of the car, Tony took off like a bat out of hell and left Eddie standing there wondering what the hell happened. Tony said he could hear Joni yelling a mile away, "Eddie, you're not getting that car." So much for Ed's 57 Chevy. Ed loved all his numerous hobbies: hunting, woodworking, smoking and drinking beer, and especially going upstate to his property. He collected cars, tractors, coins, train sets, and guns. Eddie loved his bicycle, his moped that he rode to Maspeth, Queens. He loved his metal detector and boat. Joni said when Eddie gets into something, he goes all the way. He would buy all the hobby magazines, watch all the TV shows, and not let anything get in his way to make sure that he got the most out of his newest hobby. In fact, Ed's sons, Edward and John, loved telling the story about when their father got into building model train sets in the basement. Eddie just took over the entire basement. He laid out a model train set with 2 4x8 sheets of plywood. Now, this wasn't a huge basement. The problem was, Edward and John slept in the basement, but they could no longer get to their beds. Ed and John said they would complain to Eddie, but it went in one ear and out the other. Ed would just sit in the basement, wearing his train conductor hat and his train conductor shirt, and play with those trains to his delight. Eddie and John also loved telling the story how Eddie hunted grouse for about 10 years and never caught one, never came home. Finally, Ed got his grouse. He was so proud that he finally got his grouse, he went to a taxidermist and had it preserved so that he could display it on the wall while he played with his trains in the basement. It wasn't long before Ed and John had some rough playing in the basement and knocked the grouse's head right off. They were all worried about what Eddie would do when he found out that they broke the grouse's head. Joni said Eddie just went ballistic and just tore the rest of the grouse to pieces. And that was the end of Ed's grouse hunt. Eddie loved nothing more than going to his property upstate in South New Berlin, New York. He would go alone. He would go with Joni, sometimes with his brother-in-law Tony, and many times with his entire family. But Ed especially loved a real special time when COVID hit back in 2020 and everyone went into lockdown. Eddie and Joni went upstate and hibernated alone for 3 months by themselves. Eddie, Joni, nature, Ed, cigarettes and beer. The only way to live. Now looking back, a real special time that Joni treasures with all her heart. This is when a memory for Joni truly becomes a treasure. How about Ed's hobby with the metal detector? Ed was going to discover untold treasures. Often he would go to Hendrickson Park in Valley Stream and walk in the woods with his metal detector looking for his treasure. My wife Carol and daughter Janine loved telling the story about how they used to take walks in Hendrickson Park and had a real scare one day. Apparently, there was a graveyard murderer in the news. They were taking their walk one day and they came upon a hooded man in the woods, waving at them and digging something up. They ran and started screaming, "It's the graveyard digger!" Only to find later out it was just Ed Dailey with his metal detector looking for his treasure. I never had many close friends that were Irish. When Eddie came along, he was the first who wasn't a true Goomba. At that time, Eddie didn't truly understand Italian food. This was a whole new universe to him. And boy, did he take it and run with it. No one could eat meatballs like Eddie. Eddie would have a loaf of Italian bread in one hand and a whole meatball on the fork in the other hand and be asking for seconds. If I tried to get an extra meatball out of the main serving dish, Eddie would hit me on the head with a loaf of Italian bread and tell me to piss off. He wasn't a Goomba when I met him, but he sure was a Gabon later on. On all the holidays, when the family got together, we would always start with a meal and a prayer. Ed and I would always sit close to each other. His plate was always filled to the brim, as high as it could go. The prayer would start and Eddie would already have his fork in his hand and begin dipping his Italian bread into the sauce. He could never wait for the prayer to be over. He would yell at me and tell me to shut up and get on with it. Let's just eat. He loved his food, but he couldn't wait to dig in. Eddie was a meat and potatoes guy. In fact, he was famous for his mashed potatoes. I don't know how it started, but Eddie started making mashed potatoes for the family gatherings. The funny thing was, Eddie couldn't just make a small amount of mashed potatoes. He would use a 10-pound sack of potatoes. There was always enough potatoes for the entire village of Valley Stream. The potatoes were so heavy the girls couldn't carry the potatoes to the table. When Joni was still working and Eddie had first retired, Joni would get up real grouchy in the morning. Eddie wanted no part of Joni, especially since she would be giving him things to do all day. There is a reason the family calls Joni the General. As soon as Joni got up in the morning, Ed would run out of the house and go to the 7-Eleven and buy his coffee, smokes, and beer for the day ahead. But Ed was smart. He wouldn't race home while Joni hadn't left yet for work. Ed would just keep circling around the house, waiting to see Joni's car leave. Then he would go home into his woodworking man cave in the garage and enjoy his day like a real man. Joni always knew that Eddie was hiding from him in that man cave. But Joni always wondered how Eddie functioned in that garage. No ventilation, lots of chemicals and vapors, smoking cigarettes and drinking beer in a world of his own. Christmas Eve was always a very special time at the Canatella's house. We had incredible Christmas Eve celebrations. Joni and Carol always wanted us to all perform skits and acts and go crazy. Eddie never wanted any part of it. He would start to walk away and say, "Not me." Then before you knew it, Eddie was right in the thick of things. With his sharp wit and quick humor, he would have us all hysterical laughing. Eventually, he would be wearing costumes and makeup just like Joni wanted.
What are you doing?
But the year that Edward Dailey III was born and came into Grandma's house on Christmas Eve started a whole new segment of our lives. Eddie was so proud he had a son. 2 years later came a second son, John Dailey. Eddie always said that John was born with $1 million face and always had the biggest smile. From when John was a little boy until now, Eddie would always give him a big hug and say, "Who loves you?" "John, you know who." It's no wonder he was named John Paul Dailey after the Pope. And then finally, the Immaculate Conception. 10 years later, Eddie's little Princess Catherine. The family was complete. And as Joni says, it was an Immaculate Conception. Eddie was a man that was so proud of his family. Eddie lived his life by genuine example and showed his children what respect and love of family meant to him. He wore his true colors right on his sleeve and never doubted what he believed in. That's why Eddie had such successful children. And boy, was he proud of each of them. His children have real meaningful jobs representing the New York Fire Department, the New York Port Authority Police, and the New York Police Department. Eddie and Joni couldn't be any prouder of their children and their accomplishments. You know, when I think back to when Eddie and Joni came home with Edward III, the amazing pride and joy felt by every member of our family was just extraordinary. Eddie was ecstatic. Today, we all look at the life that Edward III has built with his family and friends and the incredible duty and service he provides to all people. The apple does not fall far from the tree, and Eddie could not be any prouder. Eddie was proud of his boys. I clearly remember all the pictures of Eddie with his two sons, everybody in matching sweaters. Eddie smiling ear to ear. But when the ultimate princess was born, Eddie was beside himself. Eddie and Catherine had a special bond. Yesterday, looking at the family pictures, we all noticed so many precious moments of Catherine and Eddie hugging and having fun together on all their field trips, and the thousands of pictures of Catherine. Catherine usually got involved in all of Eddie's hobbies, whether she liked it or not. Eddie would take Catherine everywhere. The bond they had was precious and extremely evident in everything they did. Eddie was always known for just saying what's on his mind. Eddie was so excited about Catherine and Derek's engagement. Recently, during their engagement dinner, Eddie hinted that he was ready for more grandchildren. In the middle of the engagement dinner, Eddie just shouts out loud and says, "I love making babies." And everybody just lost it. We don't know about Catherine and Derek. Eddie sure had a way with words. I know for certain Eddie will rest in peace, for he knows his children will care for their mother Joan with all the love and respect that is humanly possible. I don't say this lightly. The bonds are evident with this family every day. Then Eddie became Stinky. Eddie's 3 children have been blessed with 5 beautiful grandchildren. We have Eddie's Nicholas, Aiden, and Ava, and John's Ryan and Alyssa. Eddie would always say to his grandchildren, "Hey, Stinky." And then he became Stinky Grandpa. Ed's grandchild, Nicholas, would love to scare Ed. Eddie was a big guy that was scared easily, believe it or not. Nicholas would hide under the bed sheets at night and wait for Ed to go to bed. When Eddie would get into bed, ready, sound right to sleep, you know, Eddie had to go to bed at a certain time. Underneath the sheets would be Ed with a real scary voice. And he would scare Ed, and Ed would get upset and freak out, and the whole family would be laughing, and Ed was scared all the time. Eddie always had so much fun with his grandchild, Alyssa, and her scary baby doll. I saw that doll here before. In fact, we all just watched an awesome video of Eddie at the upstate property with his entire family, being chased by Alyssa and the scary baby doll. Eddie was in his element, happy, playful, and smiling ear to ear, entertaining his grandchild and family, a true family man. Eddie was born a twin with his sister Diane. They shared an extremely special bond. Eddie and Diane would love getting together, smoking, drinking, and laughing the night away, and Wally, Diane's husband, will be right there along with them. Eddie loved his older sister Dorothy and her husband Mike, and always spent special time with his sisters and their families. Eddie became even closer with Dorothy after her husband Mike passed away, and Eddie's always made it a point to take extra care of Dorothy and include her in all the family activities. All his sister's children, Eddie's nieces and nephews, were very special to him. They had a great bond and have so many great family memories together. This eulogy would not be complete without mentioning Eddie's love for his dogs. Let's see. We have Buffy, Trixie, Willow, Molly, Tank, and the newest additions, Luna and Ellie. In fact, Joni is making sure that Eddie will forever be with his dogs, Willow and Molly. I believe that's taken care of. Tank was an incredibly huge dog and gave the family lots of memories. A favorite was when Eddie was cleaning the kitchen ceiling fan. And he had a rag in his pocket which Tank jumped up to grab and snipped at Ed, causing him to leap into the ceiling fan blades. All the kids were hysterical watching the ceiling fan blades spinning, knocking on Ed's head. Ed loved it. The Dailey family is an incredible family. I say this because it is a true fact. That is displayed on a daily basis by each and every family member. Joni and Eddie always have their door open to everyone. They always pour their heart and soul into every relationship. Their home is your home. Their love and support has been felt by everyone in this room. You can always count on Joni and Eddie to be there for you. There is no doubt of the quality of love this family has given to all of us. Look at all their friendships. Why does everyone who become associated with this family become so special to the Dailey family? They become friends forever. They become part of the family. Each of you make their family even better, and Joni and Eddie always appreciated anything that made their family stronger. I assure you, Eddie is proud. Eddie is happy. Eddie is joyful for his true success in life, his family and friends. In closing, Eddie was an especially loving person. He showed his love in many different ways, always from the heart, always sincere. Eddie was a big teddy bear of a man that always gave great big hugs. He had a favorite saying that always came straight from his heart. I love you, kid. We love you, Eddie Dailey, and we all cherish the days we had with you. God bless.
I just want to thank so many people for coming. It means so much to our family, all the love that you've given us and your generosity. Just thank you all for coming here. It means the world to me. Thank you very much.
We love you, Joni.